Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking about the books that I read in January and the books that I hope to read in February. So in January I read 3 books. I was on track to read 5 books, but then like the second half of the month didn't exactly go how I was planning, and so I didn't read 5, but it's fine. I am pretty happy with the books that I read. All 3 books I read in the same week. I read them for Winterween, which is like a spooky readathon hosted by Gabby Reads. I'll leave a link for her announcement video where she talks about like all the details of the readathon, but she also has like 2 or 3 reading vlogs that she did like throughout the week if you wanted to watch those too. But yeah, it was really fun. She does like a theme every round of the readathon, but I didn't really like participate in the theme. Which is fine. She said you don't have to. Every year I plan to participate, but then I don't end up participating, and so I was really glad that I was able to this year. Let's just get into talking about the books. The first book that I read this year was Mallory by Josh Malerman. This is the sequel to Bird Box. I gave this book a 2-star rating, which really disappointed me because I loved Bird Box and I loved the movie. And so I was just kind of like expecting more from this, but that doesn't mean it was like a bad book. If you know how the story Bird Box went, then you know where they ended up at the end, and this takes place 10 years later in the same location. Like they're still in the same place that they ended up, but a couple situations occur and they end up leaving where they had been for 10 years. And they find a safe place just for Mallory and her 2 kids. The kids are teenagers now. They're like 16 years old. And then they also find out some information about people from Mallory's life. And so now they're like traveling across the country to find them, which is really scary because they're blindfolded. Like she's wearing a blindfold. They're blindfolded. Bird Box was like super intense, and so I was expecting this book to be super intense. And there were like a couple scenes where I was like on the edge of my seat listening, because I listened to this on audiobook. But there was only a couple scenes where that happened, but like the rest of the book just kind of like dragged on. There were some other things about this book that upset me a little bit. Like the story wasn't making me upset, but just like small details that I don't understand. So yeah, this one disappointed me a little bit just because I was expecting more, but it was still entertaining. The second book that I read, I also listened to on audiobook, and it's by the same author. I read Incidents Around the House, and this book was really creepy. This is about like this demonic spirit called Other Mommy like haunting this little girl and her family. The audiobook was really fun. Like there was different voices for all the characters, and it's narrated by a child. Like the child is the main character, and so they had a kid come and narrate the audiobook. So I thought that was fun. And it's kind of like that creepy kid in the horror movie trope in this book, so that was an interesting twist on it. I loved the descriptions of Other Mommy. Super creepy, and just it sent chills down my spine. I loved it, but I wish that we had more scenes with Other Mommy. Like Other Mommy isn't the main focus of the story. The main focus of the story is like the family aspect, and like this situation is just bringing things out, like the family problems and stuff, and like the marriage problems between the parents. And so like that's the main focus of the story. It was good, but that's not the type of story that I was hoping that this would be. I didn't want like a family therapy session. I just wanted the haunting. But I gave this book 3 stars. I highly recommend this to anybody who's like interested in horror. It was a really fun read. A couple of the scenes were really unexpected. And yeah, I just had a really fun time reading this. The last book that I read in January was We Used to Live Here. This was very popular last year, and so I was very excited to pick this up and read it. I heard all the reviews, people saying like like, this is the creepiest thing they've ever read. Like, this is the scariest book that they've ever read. Like, this made people scared to be alone. And I can attest to that because, like, after reading this book, I was, like, doing double takes at the shadows in my house. And I actually ended up leaving my house to go, because I was reading this at night for the most part. And I finished the book, and then I had to leave my house and go grocery shopping at like 9 p.m. because I was like scared to be at home by myself. But this book is basically just about like unwanted, uninvited guests and like all the creepy things that happen with that. This family shows up at the main character's front door and like asks to tour the house because the father used to live in this house. And, you know, as soon as they walk in the door, like, just all of these weird things start happening and all of these, like, incidents are happening, and it's a wild ride. It's very different to read a horror novel than it is to watch a horror movie, because when you're watching a movie, you can at least cover your eyes and you don't have to look. But when you're reading a horror novel, it's like way scarier because you're picturing it in your head and you can't like close your eyes and not picture it because it's still there in your mind. And so like some of the scenes that I was reading, like I was picturing it in my brain and I couldn't make it go away because it was just in there, and that messed me up for a few minutes. But this book was really good. I loved the writing. I loved the ending. There were some parts that kind of dragged a little bit, but it wasn't bad at all. Minor spoiler, if you don't mind. In between the chapters, there are like smaller chapters that don't have anything to do with like the current situation. But it's like a reference to what's happening or a reference to like the past of one of the characters, and so it's just like an interesting addition to what's going on. And at the end of those sections there are dots and dashes, and like the first couple I didn't really think anything of it, but on like the third or fourth one I was like, wait a second, these were on the other ones. And then I was like thinking about it and I realized that it was Morse code. I don't know Morse code, but I looked it up and I was figuring it out like all throughout the book. So I thought that was a really fun element, that you're like slowly uncovering like this hidden message. I know what it says, but I don't know what it means. So if you know what I'm talking about, please let me know, because that's like the only thing that I need cleared up right now. But yeah, I give this book 4 stars. I highly recommend this one. Really random, before I continue, I decided to wait to film this when the sun started to go down, and so if the lighting is starting to change, it's because it is getting dark outside. So I should probably hurry up. I attempted to read another book in January, but I only got like a quarter of the way through it. I started to read Love and Other Train Wrecks. I didn't know that this was YA when I first went into it, but it is YA romance about this guy and a girl who are on a train, both for different reasons, but they meet on the train, and then the train has like a malfunction, and so it like breaks down in the middle of where they're going, and they're stuck on this train for like 24 hours. And obviously they're gonna fall in love on this train. But I didn't get that far. I made it like a quarter of the way through this book that was like 90 pages, and I realized that I didn't really care about the characters. I didn't care about what was going on with them individually or like between them. I didn't really care about what was going on. And I think like if I make it basically 100 pages into the book and I don't care about anything yet, then that's a really bad sign for me. And so I think I'm gonna DNF this book. It's been like 3 weeks already, so yes, I DNF'd this book. And I felt really bad because this book has been on my shelf for 7 years. But I couldn't continue. I was bored. So unfortunately, we have our very first DNF of the year, Love and Other Train Wrecks. I'm probably just going to donate this to the free library. So before we talk about the books that I'm going to read in February, I wanted to add money into my savings. I did a 2026 goals video, and in that video I talked about how I wanted to save money this year, and one of the ways that I'm going to do that is by reading books. And so every time I read a book, I'm going to put money into a jar. And so I wanted to figure out how much money I saved in January. So even though I didn't finish this book, I'm going to put in a little bit of money for the little bit of this book that I did read. That book was $18, so we'll do a quarter. So a quarter of 18 is $4.50. So we'll just call it 5. This book was $19, so we'll do plus 19. And then these two, because they're hardcover adult novels, they're both $28. So we'll do that. So that equals 80, which means that I saved 80 buckaroonies. So we're gonna do 20, 40, 60, 80 right into the jar. Sweet. Moving on. Initially, I wasn't sure what I even wanted to put on my TBR for this month, mostly because I don't typically make TBRs, especially if I call it a TBR pile. Like, I won't touch a book on it. I'm extremely a mood reader, and so, like, who knows if in 2 weeks I'm gonna feel like reading any of the books that I'm gonna talk about in this video. But we're gonna try it. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens. Somehow I ended up with 6 books on my TBR, so let's just get into it. I started reading After We Collided last month, but I only made it like 50 pages in, and then I realized that I wasn't ready for trauma. So I paused, but I would like to make a little more progress in this book this month, even if I don't finish it. Again, I'm not entirely sure why I decided to read the After series, but we're gonna do it. I already committed and finished the first one, so we're gonna keep going. I would also like to try to read Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy, because this book came out like 2 weeks ago and I bought it immediately, and that's one thing that I'm trying not to do this year, is buy a book and not read it ever. And that has been like my main problem, is that I'll buy a book and then I won't read it for a few years. And so if I'm gonna buy a book this year, it will be because I'm planning to read it like as soon as possible. And so I've had this book for a couple weeks. It's a thriller, student-teacher relationship. You know how it goes. It's about consumerism and loneliness and rage and intimacy and power, and the oftentimes misguided lengths that we'll go to in order to get what we want. Doesn't that sound enticing? I would also like to try to make an attempt to read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, because Katie from Katie is Reading is reading this for her Patreon book club this month, and I just joined her Patreon. And so I thought it would be fun to participate in the buddy reads, and this is the one that they chose for February. I'm guessing it's because the movie's coming out. This has been on so many of my TBRs, and I'm gonna be really embarrassed if I don't get this read this year. This is on my 2026 TBR. So why put it off any longer? You know what I mean? Another book that's on my 2026 TBR is Between You and Us. This is one of those books that I bought and forgot about for a couple years, but then when I was choosing my TBR and I read what this book was about, I was like re-interested in this book. And I wanted like an emotional book to read, an emotional romance book. This is like, I don't really know how to describe it without giving you the whole synopsis, but the synopsis is like 80 years long. But yeah, I really wanted something that's gonna wreck me emotionally, and I really hope that this does that for me. So on one hand, we have emotional trauma, and on the other hand, we have lighthearted romance, which is something else that I would like to read this month because Valentine's Day. and I was looking through my books and The Do-Over by Lynn Painter came up. And then I realized that this actually takes place on Valentine's Day. This girl has like the worst Valentine's Day of her life. And then she goes to bed and wakes up the next morning and it's still Valentine's Day, the worst day of her life. So it's like Groundhog Day on Valentine's Day. This is YA, which kind of makes me nervous, but I've heard amazing things about Lynn Painter, so I'm not that nervous. But yeah, I'm really excited. I just wanted like a cute, lighthearted romance novel to read because I haven't read one in a while anyways, but Valentine's Day is around the corner, so I kind of just have to. The last book that I'm going to try to read this month is 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. I just found out last night that they turned this into a TV show, and it has Dove Cameron and who's that guy? Avon Jogia from Victorious. And so I have to watch the show. And I've had this book for like 4 years. Yeah, 5 years I've had this book, and it's very short. It's only 300 pages. So there is no reason why I shouldn't be able to knock this out really quick so that I can watch the show. The show looks really good. It's like a murder mystery, but it looks really raunchy too. So it's gonna be really interesting, and I just can't wait. So I'm gonna try to read this book. Okay, I'll read you the back, and this is all I'm gonna tell you about it. No one even knew that they were together, and now one of them is dead. So I think that was all that I wanted to talk about. I'm really excited for this month of reading. I'm nervous that I'm not gonna be able to like get through the amount that I'm hoping to get through. Like, I'm not gonna be mad if I don't touch all 6 of these books, but if I can't get through a few of them, I'm gonna be pretty sad. So that's all I have for today's video. Let me know what books you're planning to read this month. Do you have any romance reading plans for Valentine's Day? If you don't, you should really make some. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you soon in the next one. Bye.